By the end of today's episode, you'll know all about how to get your self-tapes in faster while still making sure that the quality is really strong. Welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we help aspiring screen actors find high-quality auditions, sign with great agents, and book major roles in legit productions. I'm your host, Martin Benson, and as you may or may not know, you can vastly increase your chances of booking a role, or at least getting a callback, by being one of the first to submit your self-tape. I talked about that in my previous episode, but in today's episode, I'm going to cover how to set up a self-tape process that's always ready to go, specific tips for finding readers and how to adapt when one isn't available, and how to analyze your own footage without a coach to ensure it's strong enough to submit using my 4-level performance grading system. Okay, so how do you deal with the problem of wanting to be one of the first people to submit your self-tape, but also wanting to make sure that it's done in good quality? It might take some time to get together a reader and an acting coach who can help make sure that you're submitting something strong, right? Well, there are a few things that I definitely recommend taking care of, and they all have to do with things that are in your control. So first, be ready at a moment's notice. So the first thing that you should do is make sure that your self-tape setup is always ready to go. If you're on vacation or out of town, think ahead about where you're going to shoot, even if all you have is your iPhone, right? So there's ways to achieve good quality lighting without any equipment, good quality sound without any professional microphones, and even a professional backdrop without using an actual backdrop. It just takes some planning ahead. So at a bare minimum, you should always have a mini tripod that you can attach your phone to. But just think about it. As soon as you arrive at, let's say, a hotel or wherever you're staying, that should be one of the first things you should figure out so that you know and you're set in case an audition comes up. Now, when you're at home, I personally recommend setting up a dedicated self-tape space, right? So find a room or a part of a room where you can set things up and leave them ready at a moment's notice. Now, I know that this might sound a little bit overwhelming, especially if you have a partner who likes to keep things neat like I do. So my wife loves to keep our house spotless, and I can't really set up a permanent station for filming podcast episodes or Zoom meetings with clients. But after some creative thinking, I turned a space that's literally the size of a closet in our basement into a quality recording room. I was able to set up my camera, microphone, and lighting in there, and my computer, and I just always have this professional space ready to go. And since it's out of the way, my wife doesn't mind. So take some time to think about it. Like, how might you set up something similar for self-tapes? They are going to always be a consistent part of your career, so the sooner that you figure this out, the better off you're going to be. Because again, as we're talking about, the faster you can submit your self-tapes, the higher the likelihood that you'll book the role. If you start booking a lot of paid acting work, your partner might eventually be more accepting of giving you a bigger space for auditions. But for now, you need to figure out a temporary solution so that you can get those self-tapes in right away. Now, the next thing is that you definitely need to make sure that you block off time in your calendar. So the moment that you get a self-tape request, immediately block off a space in your calendar and make sure not to schedule anything over that, okay? You want to record your self-tape as soon as possible. Now, the next and bigger question is, what do you do in terms of getting a reader on short notice? Couple of potential things here, right? So number one is by having what I call a reader buddy, right? So you should keep a list of about 2 or 3 people that you can consistently reach out to as potential readers. You can offer to read for them in return, right? So whenever you need someone, reach out to all 3 of those people at once, ask who's available, and then go with whoever responds first and let the other 2 people know that you appreciate their availability and will reach out next time. By the way, make sure that you text them all individually. It's not a good idea to have a text chain because if they can see that you've reached out to the other people, it might make them less likely to respond. So it's kind of like when you send an email to a group of people and everyone's like, oh, I'm not going to respond because someone else will. And then no one responds, right? So you don't want that to happen. So it's better to text people independently in individual text chains. The next option for a reader on short notice is to use certain paid services. So there's things like We Audition. You can pay to have a reader available right away. And obviously that's particularly useful for important auditions, especially because the readers that you're going to get are typically going to be a little bit better than a random person that maybe you know who is not an actor, like a family member who are just going to give you a monotonous reading of the scene that's really boring to perform with, right? That can negatively impact your performance. Finally, there's certain apps, right? So apps like Rehearser, those are going to allow you to pre-record the readers or the other characters' lines, and then the app will essentially act as if it's your reader. Now, just keep in mind some technical challenges with these types of things. So like there's certain apps that allow you to alter your own voice so that you sound different, but in some cases it can actually become distracting. For example, one of my clients used a really unnatural deep voice for the reader, and it just distracted casting directors and overshadowed his performance, right? So you want to keep the reader's voice natural and make sure that the timing is smooth. As I've been saying, with any of these things that we're talking about, the more prep that you can do in advance so that you know how to do this stuff and you're all set up, the better off you're going to be for speed. So if you're going to use an app, do some research, look up online and get some ideas of how you can make sure that it's as natural as possible. But do this before the audition opportunity comes along. Okay, finally, the last part of making sure that you are able to submit quickly and also professionally is being able to sort of self-coach instead of relying on an acting coach. There's a lot of actors who want to hire a professional acting coach when it comes to important auditions. They might join you over Zoom and be able to give you feedback in real time on your performance to make sure that it's strong. And while this is a great idea, it can also delay your self-tape submission if the coach's schedule isn't going to align well with yours or your readers. So for that reason, I generally recommend learning how to analyze your own footage so that you can know for sure when it's good enough to submit. So I have something that I teach called the 4 levels of acting. And it's basically a 4-level system that allows you to grade your acting ability and determine if your performance is ready to submit. Okay, so just for a brief overview, all right, level 1 is all about technical issues with your performance, right? So if your self-tape setup is unprofessional, right? Like the lighting, the sound, the framing is off. Also, if you haven't memorized your lines well and you're looking down too much, or it's kind of impacting your performance, or if there's indication, right? So you have overacting, or your performance is melodramatic or looks more theatrical and is not natural for screen acting. If your performance has these kinds of problems, casting directors are almost definitely going to pass and not even consider you, especially when it comes to a bigger project like something for, legit film and TV where it might be a union level role. Now, level 2 acting is you fixed all those technical problems, but you're still not clear on your choices, right? So you need to get super clear and you need to ask yourself a series of questions. For instance, who is your character? Who are you talking to? Why are you saying each line? And why are you saying each line the way you're saying it, right? So when you're going back and watching your clips, why did you say the line like that? Does it make sense? Certain things that you might want to ask yourself when you're analyzing include like, why would my character admit this? Or what is my character's goal in saying this specific word or this specific phrase? They're saying it this way, but they could have said it this other way. So why are they saying it this way? Does that matter? Or why am I using this particular tone here when you're watching your clip back? The more clear everything is, it's going to be much easier for someone to follow your performance and it's going to seem more real, right? So if you're watching your clip and something just kind of feels off, or you're not able to put your finger on it, it's usually because a choice wasn't made that should have been made at that point. So go back and ask yourself why. Try to get clear, like, what is my character talking about here? Why are they saying this, right? The clearer that you are, the easier it's going to be to watch your performance, and the less kind of all over the place it'll feel, and the more it'll sort of draw the viewer in. Now, level 2 is also something that a casting director is almost never going to hire an actor if they have a level 2 performance. But once you get to level 3 and level 4, those are the types of performances that casting directors will hire actors for. So a level 3 is a performance that has fixed all of those choices. Every choice is perfectly clear. And the audience is going to easily be able to watch the performance, and they just kind of go along for the ride. These are good enough to submit, and casting directors will take them seriously. The problem is just that they're not necessarily emotional enough. Now, keep in mind that not every performance actually needs to be emotional, right? So if you're taking an order at a diner and you're playing a waiter, well, we don't need a really emotional way for you to take people's orders. You just want to be straightforward. So that would require a level 3 performance. But for anything that is more emotional for the scene, you want to, if possible, aim for a level 4 performance. And that is one that is where you're making stronger choices, and they have more emotional depth and even internal conflict. So, for example, think about casually talking to a friend while you're sitting on a bench, or having a conversation at your dying mother's bedside, right? The emotional stakes are going to make the second scenario a lot more impactful and a lot more emotional. Adding this emotional weight and inner conflict and raising the stakes like this is what will elevate a performance to level 4. Now, I go deeper on the 4 levels of acting in other podcast episodes, but the most important thing here in terms of submitting your self-tape faster is to make sure that you're prepared, right? So you want to have your technical setup ready to go. You want to have a plan on how to get a reader fast. And you also want to at least understand what makes for a strong performance so that you don't need to rely on having an acting coach all the time. It's definitely a sort of give and take system, right? If you don't know how to coach yourself and you don't know what makes for a good performance, then you're going to always be sacrificing either the time or the quality if you can't get an acting coach there. But if you are able to do all these things, you'll be able to much more quickly submit your performances, get those self-tapes in right away, and they'll all be pretty strong. Well, thanks for listening. Now, if you want to dive even deeper on the casting process and learn how to book more roles, I highly recommend checking out my podcast called Why Playing It Safe in Auditions Could Be Sabotaging Your Acting Career, which is episode number 114. You're going to learn how to use your personality to stand out and be more memorable to casting directors. Okay, again, it's episode number 114, Why Playing It Safe in Auditions Could Be Sabotaging Your Acting Career, and it's on the Actor's Career Compass. Lastly, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, you can learn more about how that works on my website, martinbenson.com. You can sign up for the waitlist there, and you'll also get some of my top tips on how to book more acting work. Coaching spots usually open up every few months, and I'll keep you up to date on that. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.